Big 10 Plus 4 is a member of Odd Pods Media and ASAP All Sports All Plays Network.
Welcome into Big 10 Plus 4. I'm Dalton Shetler. That's Sam Sprunger. If you're new to the program, we're college sports with a Midwest perspective, blue collar and blue blood. Sam, how we doing today?
It's the most wonderful time of the year. It's our Christmas, I tell you what.
It really is. We have the Big 10 tournament coming up. We have the big dance coming up.
Mm-hmm.
This is the time to lock in. It's the time where a bunch of schools you've never seen played get buzzer beaters to go to the big dance. We've already seen that with Chattanooga this season, knocking off Furman. I mean, it's just absolutely it's such a buffet of food you just leave so overfull, so stuffed just from this month of March.
Well, and the great thing is I didn't grow up with cable television. Okay, so this is back in the day when,
back in my day,
the Farmer 5, as they so lovingly call it, is so like anytime that there was sports on before 5 o'clock in the evening, I was watching it. I didn't care what it was, and it was just awesome that then 2 days of the year there's basketball at noon, and it's college basketball, and it's good college basketball, and oh my gosh, the memories.
There has to be nothing. Well, as a student, I could say this. When you have class going on, but you also have an iPad or a screen with your games somewhere, like that is just delightful. That's the experience.
Well, and you know that I'm a teacher by day, and so
do you punish these kids, Sam? You need to be put on the spot for that. Do you punish these kids?
How so? How? By not letting them watch the games?
Yeah. Do you let them watch the games?
Well, that's just it. What I've done in the past, and I work online now, so I don't necessarily have a classroom. But whenever the Big 10 tournament or the NCAA or NCAA tournament went, I would give them something early, something that would cover our bases of, yes, we did cover something new or something, but I would have the games on. Like, I have satellite to where I could sign into my account and watch it on TV or watch it on the projector, or they've done the March Madness on demand now. That's free that you can watch it too. So yeah, I normally, and I'll tell them, look, if we get this done, we need to do it right. We need to get it done. But once we get it done, I will put the games on, and you will never. Probably 2 of my most productive days for classes doing their work.
Sam basically told the kids, I'm going to be watching the games at my desk. If you kids figure it out, you can join me. That's
work amongst yourselves. I'm going to watch basketball.
That's the way to do it. But speaking of this Big 10 tournament, for those who may not be quite aware of how this all shook out, I did pull up the bracket here. So Wednesday, today, you have 2 games to start and tip off the Big 10 tournament. Nebraska and Northwestern. The Cornhuskers are the 13 seed. Northwestern is the 12 seed. I believe that says that's a 6 o'clock tip. Boy, my eyes are starting to go too. I'm getting old too.
Old age.
Minnesota, a 14 seed against 11 seed Penn State. That's also tonight. So you have those 2 games. We'll be talking about some of these matchups in a moment, but the rest of the bracket, Thursday, to start the day at 11:30 in the morning. 9 seed Indiana, fighting for an NCAA tournament berth, will be taking on 8 seed Michigan in a big one that we'll be chatting about. 5 seed Iowa. After that one, we'll be getting ready to play the winner between Nebraska and Northwestern. Then you move to Thursday night. 10 seed Maryland will take on 7 seed Michigan State. That one's at 6:30. And 6 seed Ohio State will play the winner between Minnesota and Penn State. We'll take a look at Friday real quick, and this is where you really have to stay with me because it's dependent on a lot of winners.
Yeah, it's all at least Dalton. It's a set bracket, not like the Big Ten hockey tournament where the lowest seed goes to the highest seed remaining.
Right. Yeah, no, that's that one really can spin you in a circle. But Friday, that's where the teams with the double buys, those 4 teams actually get into play. So we'll start with 1 seed Illinois. Illinois on Friday morning at 11:30 will play the winner between Indiana and Michigan. 4 seed Rutgers right after that will play the winners between Iowa, Nebraska, and Northwestern. They'll play one of those 3 teams. For Wisconsin, Friday evening at 6:30, the 2nd seeded Badgers will play the winner between Maryland and Michigan State. And the 3rd seed Purdue Boilermakers at the very end of Friday will play the winner between Ohio State, Minnesota, and Penn State. So that's how that shakes out for the Big Ten tourney.
Yeah, and how we got here is amazing to me because Rutgers is the 4th seed in the tournament. And to me, that says if you're good enough to finish to that 4 spot in a whole year and the wins that they have on their resume, I don't think they're on the bubble anymore.
No, I think you're right. I think they've pushed themselves far enough away from the bubble. I think the real bubble conversation now becomes looking at it. Indiana is a really big bubble conversation. I think Michigan might have even played itself enough away with a win at Ohio State on the last day of the season. And I don't know how much like this gets weighed in, but Hunter Dickinson wasn't there. It was a gutty win for the Wolverines to close out the.
I missed why.
Illness, they said.
Okay, fair enough.
So
I just didn't hear. I just heard he's not in the lineup, and then of course that was all I heard. And yeah.
Curious what it meant for the future.
I was curious about it, but I wasn't so curious about it that I wanted to investigate it too much.
Well, the big news for Big Ten fans, Johnny Davis leaves the game at the end of the season against Nebraska with an injury to the lower body. Now, the only updates we've really heard, at least that I'm aware of, Greg Gard, after the game, was asked about it. He said he's optimistic that Davis will be back kind of around this time for the Big Ten tourney. Johnny Davis yesterday on the Big Ten Network joined as he was named Big Ten Player of the Year. We'll go through some of those awards later on here in this program too. But Johnny Davis was on the show and he said, yeah, he's going to be fine. He'll be able to come back. So we're expecting him to come back. Is he 100%? There's some other questions that kind of loom out there around Johnny Davis, but that's a big one to watch for as everybody gets ready to head to Indy.
Well, my question on that though is it necessarily for Wisconsin's sake? Let's think about this. Are they jacking enough for seeding right now in the NCAA tournament that they would take a risk on playing him if he wasn't ready? Does that make sense to what I'm asking there?
Yeah, like does potential seed position mean enough that you would run a risk if there is a risk with Johnny?
Correct.
And I think with Wisconsin's current state, where they're pretty firmly a 2 right now.
I've seen a 2 in most, but I have seen a couple say still a 3. But yeah, I mean they're pretty solidly either a 2 or a 3.
Look, I'll be honest with you. Without Johnny Davis, I'm not sure Wisconsin. We're having a conversation about a 2 or 3 seed.
Wisconsin's playing today if they don't have Johnny Davis.
Yeah, like we're legitimately, I believe, having a conversation about do the Badgers even make the big dance if Johnny Davis is not on that team. So to me, yeah, if Johnny's not 100%, no way.
Let him rest.
Yeah, no
because
way.
You know what? Even if Wisconsin gets beat on Friday, I mean, first off, they have till Friday.
Yep.
Secondly, that if you let him rest because you're not worried about seeding, and honestly, I wouldn't be.
Yep.
And if there was any doubt whatsoever that he's only 85%, you sit his butt on the bench. You don't even let him suit up because he's what's going to get you to New Orleans if you're going to make it there.
Yeah, no, I'm 100% agreed. 100% agreed. And who knows? I mean, Wisconsin's done a pretty nice job so far, and maybe they don't know, but of not necessarily fully disclosing where they're at in this process. If Johnny's 100%, then hey, spot on, Johnny.
Yeah, well, and I say the nice thing because they don't have to work. They know they're in the tournament.
Yep.
So this Big Ten tournament is just kind of window dressing. They don't, you don't have to perform necessarily to win. I mean, you want to win. Don't take me that way. You want to win,
I
but
know.
you don't have to win to be in. Now, IU, they have to win to be in.
Correct. And
so I think if there's any doubt that he's not 100% and there's no pain, no issue whatsoever, if there's any doubt that he's not, sit him down.
And as I've kind of said before, my hierarchy of things is up here. And if you're listening on audio, I got my hand to the top of the screen. Here's where the Big Ten regular season is in terms of mattering. Just below that, the NCAA tournament mattering. A little bit down here towards the bottom of the screen is where the Big Ten tournament matters to me. Like and that doesn't take anything away. It's just saying that if you had to choose, if you find yourself in a spot where you need to put yourself in a better spot for the NCAA tournament at the risk of running you a bit behind in the Big Ten tournament, do it. Do it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's been a ton said, in past years that, Purdue just can't play in the Big Ten tournament. I don't care.
Yep.
I don't care that Purdue's only won the Big Ten tournament once. I don't. Now, that's not to say I don't want them to win it, but it does not affect me in any. I will be heartbroken. Purdue could get beaten the first round of both the Big Ten and NCAA tournament, and I'm going to be more heartbroken that they finished third in the Big Ten conference.
Nope, that's absolutely correct.
But I do want to look at a couple of the potential matchups that are that could come up into the tournament. And now this is all potential because we don't know how the early games have worked into it. But
and before you start going down that trail, I do just want to give off a small anecdote because we're kind of talking about the value of the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah,
I remember in 2019 when Michigan State won it, the first round they had one of the top seeds. They didn't really play Cassius Winston the entire game. They threw out Foster Lawyer for most of that game, and Foster Lawyer just went stupid, dropping like 20 points against the Buckeyes. And we're like, oh, shoot, we're moving on. And then we found ourselves in a spot against Wisconsin, end up winning that one, and we ended up in a title game. We're like, hey, you might as well win the championship since you're here. But that's a lot more of how that play. Cassius Winston wasn't playing a ton against Ohio State, not nearly the amount of minutes he normally plays.
Was he hurt, or was there? I mean, or was it just hey, we don't care about this tournament necessarily in the aspect of making sure everybody is playing. Let's get others play time.
As you worded it a little bit more carefully last time, it's not that you don't want to win.
Correct.
It's just let's get in the best spot possible for the NCAA tournament. We just finished this grind of 20 Big Ten basketball games. If 3 games in 3 days trying to bust it out's not we don't need to wear guys down that are already grinded down.
Well, and it's one thing when you're playing in a tournament when there's another game still, even if you lose.
Yep.
You can take more risk in the aspect of you can put those bench players that aren't normally getting a lot of playing time. Hey, why not put them in a tournament setting and get them some playing time? So when the tournament that matters starts playing, if you need them, they've got that experience, and it's immediate. They just had it.
And that's I'm curious if some teams do. I'm curious though, because as you said, you're a Purdue fan.
Yeah. I think we've mentioned that once or twice, right?
Yeah, I know. But for Purdue, I feel like the Boilermakers obviously are a little frustrated with how things happen in the regular season, losing 4 games on a buzzer beater or game winner. Does it feel like maybe for Purdue they're like, okay, you know what? Maybe we can get it all back in one swing with the Big Ten tournament championship. Do they take stock into it just because how this season played out where they feel bitten?
I think with the way that the end of the season the regular season worked its way out. They were in the driver's seat. They win out, they win the Big Ten. I mean, it wasn't even a share matter. It was they win out, they win it all by themselves. Michigan State hits a game winner. Wisconsin, the next game, hits a game winner, and all of a sudden they're 2 games down.
Wisconsin banks 2 shots in the final 30 seconds.
Let's not relive this pain, Dalton. Okay. But yeah, I mean, those 2, and then honestly, I'm surprised. I guess I can't be too surprised because IU is playing for their tournament lives. So I guess maybe they put a lot more, and not that Purdue didn't that discounted IU. It's their rival. They lost previously to them, and so they wanted to win. So, but I think I'm surprised that it was that close. So to answer your long answer or short answer made long for your question, yeah, I think maybe they do put a little bit more stock into it just to get into the swing of what that tournament's going to look like come next week.
Build confidence, momentum heading into the big dance.
And you know what? They can take some risks, in what they do, maybe because they do know that there is yet another game to play.
Yeah.
There's another tournament to get into. So they can take a little bit, but they want to establish their defense. Is there a reason, and you might know this a little bit more, is Matt Painter deathly against a zone?
Yes, he is.
Okay.
He actually shared that answer. Somebody in the media had asked him that same question this year, and his
I'm glad I didn't.
Yeah. Well, and I guess he did kind of put the media on the spot for it, but he asked, when's the last time a team that primarily played zone won the Big Ten? He asked that to the media, and nobody really had an answer. And he goes, see, I study this stuff all the time. And he said it was Minnesota, and I think it was either from the 70s or 80s, like 73 or 83, Minnesota from 40 years ago, 50 years ago. And he goes, for whatever reason.
Whoa. You just said the 80s and 50 years. Come on, dude. I was born in 79. I'm only in my early 40s.
I said it was either 80s or 70s because I don't remember.
70s. Come on.
Well, that would be 50, though.
Well, it'd be 49 technically. Still 40s.
If you know what, I'll grant you that technicality. Thank you, Sam.
Dang it! But don't do this to me. I'm not that old yet.
But Matt's reasoning was, he said, look, it just doesn't really work in this conference. The Big Ten, for whatever reason, it doesn't necessarily allow it. He said, think about John Beilein at West Virginia. He ran that 1-3-1 defense that gave everybody fits. And when he first got to Michigan, obviously it was, you kind of need to establish yourself, get the players in that you need to be able to run your system. But eventually he never went to the 1-3-1 because it just, man-to-man is just how this conference plays out.
Yeah, and I get that, but what I'm asking, I'm not asking him to run the Boeheim zone, as the defense you play. But when you're getting eaten alive on the perimeter and you can't get out there should be get over your hubris and turn into that zone for a few minutes, at least to quell that onslaught of perimeter shooting. Because you know what? Just as much as I do, a zone defense can stop the floodgates if used at certain times. I mean, I can remember Bob Knight, who was vehemently against using a zone defense. Like, he would live and die on that hill, much like Painter is. And I get it. I'm not asking you to change your style, but Bob Knight played a 2-3 zone or a 3-2 zone, a zone defense the year Glenn Robinson was in Bloomington, and he ate IU alive. And Bob Knight got over himself and went to a zone defense, and IU ended up winning that game by 1 or 2 points because they did it. And Robinson had close to 40 points at the time that they switched, and all of a sudden he couldn't do anything.
I see your point, because I mean, if you go to a 2-3 zone, you would run the risk of more 3-point shots hitting. I mean, that's what you run with the 2-3,
right?
But your giants in Edey and Williams would be not vulnerable there on
Not
the
as
perimeter.
exposed. Right.
They would be shoved down under the rim. They'd protect down low, and that would keep them out of foul trouble as well. So I see the concept, the philosophy you're kind of going after there. I can't necessarily even say you're wrong. I would be curious as to why, because I believe Matt Painter sees that too, and
Uh-huh.
he's just
He's a
decided
smart
against
guy.
it.
I'm not silly to think that.
Yeah, I'm curious as to if it's just him leaning on, hey, historically, it never works. And I just trust so much in what that's provided us the last many decades, or if he looks at that concept and sees flaws that we don't see. Like, I'm curious what his rationale at the end of the day is. You know what I mean? When he's trying to make that decision.
Right. And you know what? I totally get not using it as a defensive like your
A
philosophy.
primary defense, yeah.
Right. But you have it in your pocket to where if you're struggling, you can pull it out and say,
Agreed.
okay, we're going to throw this at this other. And if anything, that would disrupt the offense enough to affect that as well. Even just showing it and maybe not even doing a great job at the transitioning back and forth, it's still enough to throw off an offense that, whoa, we're not picking on a man anymore.
Yep.
You know, picking a man to man, we're picking a zone, and it's a different concept offensively too, playing against the zone. So it's not anything that I still love Matt Painter. I still will die on the hill of boiler up, hammer down, but just a curiosity because I really would like to see Purdue, if they're going to lose, actually lose the game and not lose it because of their something shortcoming that they have.
Right.
I
And
want them to get beat rather
you know,
than them lose it.
like, Sam, we say all that, but if the ball bounces differently in 4 games where they don't fall on a buzzer beater, like
Purdue's number 1 team in the country, probably.
it's an 18-2 Big Ten team. Like,
Yeah.
So yeah, who knows? But it'll be fun to see. I tell you what, we'll move to the second quarter. I was a ball hog. I stole the ball from you on that. Sam.
Let's
We'll go
talk
back to your point.
potential matchups and championship. Who we've got winning? How about that?
All right.
Second quarter coming up.
Potential matchups, or the matchups we know so far. Let's start off with today, Wednesday. You have 2 matchups, 2 games happening later on tonight. You have Nebraska Northwestern, and you have Minnesota Penn State. You want to start here, Sam?
So unless you're a fan of these teams, or like us, where we just are geeks about stuff, these probably are not really paid attention too much, right?
Hey, Nebraska 3-game win streak. That's the best in the Big Ten.
And 2 of them against high or ranked teams.
Yeah, that was the end of the year for Nebraska.
And
is
I think
something
both on the road too.
I did not have that on the bingo card. I don't know how the Huskers pulled that off, but here they come to Indy now with 3 games in their pocket. They go against Northwestern, which I'll be honest with you, all these games are starting to happen at the same time where I'm not able to watch as much as I would like to, or like I did earlier in the year. So I don't know what Nebraska's done to win these games. My assumption is McGowan's is just going dumb. I haven't really been able to watch. But whatever momentum or lightning in a bottle they've caught over the last week, that could get them a win against the Wildcats.
Yeah, and I would say and this is how much, I mean, I've paid attention to what they've done as in the end result, okay, for both of these teams. So by going just what they've been doing here recently, I'll take Nebraska in the points.
Yeah, I get it.
They're on the streak compared to Northwestern. I mean, Nebraska for the whole season has been the 14th seed if the tournament starts today, and they're not anymore because of how they've played right at the tail end. So I'll go ahead and say Nebraska is going to play Ohio State.
Okay, so you have Nebraska moving on.
Not Ohio State. Where are they at in the bracket? Jeez, oh Pete. I should know the bracket.
They would be playing Iowa.
That's what I meant.
So yeah. Fred Hoiberg, of course, is the coach there at Nebraska, and he's helped get it to be able to elevate here at the end of the season. This team didn't give up when really this team could have given up pretty easily.
For sure.
But I do want to mention for anybody who wants to pay attention to that game tonight, maybe a couple just bullet points. So unless somebody's been hurt, again, like I said, I haven't watched Nebraska recently, but Bryce McGowan's is the kid for Nebraska to watch. Bryce McGowan's is the highest rated recruit in Nebraska basketball history. He came in as a 5-star. He's a freshman right now. He was named to the all freshman team, but he's been putting up 17 points a game, 18 points a game in the Big Ten season. His brother, Trey McGowan's, has been hurt most of the year. He's back now. At least I believe he still is. But
he hasn't rehurt himself yet.
He's another one of the best players on this team. And then you add in Alonzo Verge as well. So those are a couple guys to really keep an eye on for Nebraska. For Northwestern, Boo Buie. I know it's a funny name if you haven't been following Big Ten basketball, but Boo Buie. Actually, for some Big Ten nerds out there, maybe like you and I, Sam, you remember a kid named, guy, named Taylor Battle for Penn State years ago? So Taylor Battle is cousins with Boo Buie. And Taylor Battle is now on the Northwestern coaching staff, coaching his cousin, Boo Buie. So, and Boo Buie is a gamer. He's been averaging over 14 points a game. He's, 4 assists a game. He scored 27 points against Nebraska last time with 6 3-pointers made as well. Boo Buie is that dude, and he can hit some big shots. Also, Pete Nance, want to bring him up, leads the team in scoring, rebounds, and blocks. He's the brother of Larry Nance Jr. in the NBA.
If he was the brother of Larry Nance Jr. and then obviously the son of Larry Nance.
Correct. And this is finally his senior year. It feels like Pete's been there for a while, but so that's kind of the matchups between those two games. Those are the strengths between those two teams.
Yeah. Well, and I'll still take Nebraska.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a long-winded way, but I do feel like maybe that helps somebody who hasn't been paying attention. So
sure.
Let's flip over real quick to Minnesota Penn State. That's the game happening after that. For Minnesota, under first-year head coach Ben Johnson, Penn State under first-year head coach Micah Shrewsbury. So a couple of rookies will duel it out in Indy for the Big Ten tourney. For Minnesota, you need to know 2 transfers. Peyton Willis, who is now in his second stint at Minnesota. He was there originally, transferred out, now transferred back with Ben Johnson coming in. He's been tearing it up. So is Jamison Battle. That's a name to pay attention to tonight as well. For Penn State, John Hara is just an old school guy. Mm-hmm. He averages a double-double. He entered the transfer portal when it was announced that Pat Chambers was gone and they were going to get a new coach. And he decided to come back, and he's really kind of embodied the culture and laying the foundation for what Penn State basketball is trying to be under Shrewsbury. But John Harris, a big one to pay attention to for Penn State tonight.
Well, and with Penn State, I really like Micah Shrewsbury. I mean, he was on the staff with Matt Painter, so that's how why I have the affinity for him. But it's not just because he was at Purdue. He is a really good coach. And, this is where and right, wrong, or indifferent, this is where we thought Minnesota would be this year because of just everything, at least to me.
Well, and you're right, but it was amazing. At one point, this team was flirting with the top 25.
I know.
This team played above water for a while, and then the Big Ten season just absolutely engulfed them because, look, I mentioned those 2 transfers that are there at Minnesota. Mm-hmm. There's not a lot outside of that. There's not a lot of depth. So these guys are playing big minutes and they're getting run down. I mean, that's why a deep rotation, a big bench comes in such big play when it comes to the Big Ten season. And Minnesota does not have that, period.
Right. Well, and that's why you always worry about when a team gets down a lot and they have to fight to get back into it, whether they've got enough to finish it. And I think Minnesota got to that point where, like you said, they've run them down so far that they just kind of ran out of gas. Yep. And they went from, looking at the standings, probably from 10th in the conference, all just slowly notching their way back down. And then they end up, 14th. And it's tough because you feel bad for those kids who are busting their humps to play.
And I feel bad for the coach too. Like,
oh, sure. He came into a gutted roster.
I think he has one returning player, and that's
Mhm.
Eric Curry. Like,
Yeah.
this dude had done yeoman's work early in the season for this team to even be in that position. I mean,
Mhm.
they were well above water with what they're able to accomplish, but he's
Right.
doing a nice job there. I'll also mention for Penn State, I was trying to pull up some of the other shooters because they got some guys on the outside. Jalen Pickett, Seth Lundy, Sam Sessoms. Those are three Nittany Lions to be paying attention to tonight as well. Let's move forward to. Oh, did you get a winner? Are you taking Penn State?
Yeah, I'll take Penn State.
Okay,
I think they play Ohio State.
yeah, I think you're right. So let's go to Thursday matchups, the ones we know. Indiana and Michigan. Now, this is the hot game because this game has more riding on it than any other game
Mhm.
in this tournament. Indiana's the 9 seed, Michigan the 8 seed. Indiana yet again finishes below 500 in the Big Ten. I know Sam is starting to just soak this in. But to be fair, I think Mike Woodson's done a pretty good job. I think this roster needs some help. Mike Woodson in his first year.
He has. I was doubtful because I talked to a couple of people that one was Marvin Williams Sr. His son played for Mike Woodson in Atlanta, and he absolutely did not approve of how Mike Woodson handled Marvin Williams at a young age.
Mm-hmm.
So it made me wonder. Mike Woodson's moving into a realm where all the kids are young. All the
Yep.
players are young. Was it gonna translate? And to his credit, he's done a pretty good job. I didn't expect IU to be this competitive. And do you notice that I always say IU and not the state or the full name?
Why is that?
I don't like it. I lived in Indiana. That is not a team
So you
I
can
want to
say
talk about.
that. Okay. I was curious what the rules were with that. Interesting.
So it's IU. So you know
IU.
specifically that I'm talking about the team in Bloomington. But I to his credit, I didn't expect IU to be much this year because of that just influx of Miller out the door, Woodson coming in, that transition year, and he's done a very good job at it.
Yeah, no, he certainly has, and it helps when you have Trace Jackson Davis. I mean,
Yeah,
this guy
that
is
helped him coming back. Him coming
uh,
back really helped Mike Woodson, do well this year. So
Trace
um,
has been unbelievable. I
mhm,
think, and not to step on the toe, but what really the surprise is Race Thompson.
mhm.
What Race Thompson has been this year has been simply amazing. He's made one of the bigger jumps, and of course we always talk about Johnny Davis and Keegan Murray and their jumps because why wouldn't you and what they've done?
Right.
But Race Thompson is one of the most improved players in Big Ten. And of course, for Race, if we're kind of giving you the scouting report on all these guys, Race Thompson's the son of somebody you might recognize, Big Ten fans out there.
Michael?
Daryl
Oh,
Daryl
Daryl.
Thompson.
Okay.
Yeah. So Daryl
Okay.
Thompson was and still is the leading rusher for Minnesota football.
Yep. Yep.
So Race Thompson is
See,
the son of
I was
him.
thinking basketball.
Yeah, that's fair.
So,
That's
since
fair.
we're talking basketball.
Well, Michael Thompson's kid is Clay Thompson.
Yeah, I knew that, but I didn't know if he had another one.
Yeah.
Of course, I figure we probably would hear about that a little bit, huh?
Yeah, probably. And the news beat is picking up that Race is not quite sure if he's coming back again in Bloomington. So they'll kind of figure that out as they move forward, but that's gotten some buzz. To me, Sam, and we haven't even talked about Michigan, who IU is playing, as you would put it.
You can call them that. I call them IU.
We haven't even talked about Michigan yet, but Xavier Johnson for IU, I think, is where this game is dependent on there at guard because he is a bit of a wiry guy. And sometimes when you get him good, you're playing against Purdue and you're playing against Purdue pretty well. When you get him bad, you're probably going to struggle against teams
IU?
you should. Yes.
Okay. You said Purdue.
Well, I said when Xavier Johnson's
versus
playing
Purdue.
well.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Because Xavier Johnson played well in those games,
Yeah.
and that keeps them in. He completely changes the ceiling dependent on how he plays for what that team can be. And for Michigan, they got a guard in Devontae Jones, the transfer from Coastal Carolina, who's really caught on lately, and especially defensively, that could be a bit of an issue for the Hoosiers.
I look at this game and I sit there and think, and you talked about how Michigan probably worked its way off the bubble at least a little bit.
Yeah.
Everything I've seen though, they're still in a first four game.
Okay.
So that tells me that they're still at least bubble adjacent. Maybe not firmly on, but they're very close to it still. So it's possible that the loser of this game doesn't get in.
Yeah.
And that is intriguing to me because we just talked about teams that go into this tournament not needing anything from it other than just to work on things or rest or whatever. These two have to play and they have to win.
Yep.
And I like that concept, but at the same time, what a position to be to rely solely on whether or not you win games in the conference tournament.
Yep. No, and that's why if you are just a fan, that's the game to circle no matter what, because that one, it's no pomp and circumstance. I mean, they are trying to win. And a lot of these teams that aren't guaranteed are going to try that too, because this is their only shot is to see if they can win a Big Ten tournament.
Well, I can remember it might be upwards of 10 or so years ago when Illinois was a dumpster fire and 1-18 or 1-17 in the conference and got to the final championship game of the Big Ten. There were teams on the bubble that were worried. They were sweating bullets because had Illinois won, and they were horrible. I mean, like they were horrible. But they put together just enough of a string to get to the championship game, and all these bubble teams are going, whoever they were playing, it might have been Michigan State or somebody.
I think it was.
Just, oh my God, come on, Michigan State. Yeah. All of a sudden, they became the biggest Michigan State fans ever.
But yeah, to your point, this IU Michigan game should absolutely be intense. Yeah. Winner needs it, loser needs it. Like everybody needs this game. And for Michigan, by the way, we kind of ran through some of IU's roster. For Michigan, Hunter Dickinson's the stud. He's the horse. He's just a low down low at 7'1". But then you surround him with a couple of freshmen that are starting to come on. Caleb Houston starting to find his shot a little bit down the stretch of the season. Musa Diabate is another big for Michigan that is absolutely relentless down low. I would put it that way. He's athletic. He's able to find himself offensive rebounds. He's an athletic presence who's always giving people fits down low. And then Eli Brooks, who's been there forever, is still out there on the wing and is really their best shooter. So that's kind of the makeup of Michigan. Real quick before we get to halftime, because I know we're running a little long here, Sam.
Actually, we've got a couple of other things to cover, so we can extend the second quarter just a touch to be able to jump into it. So
good enough. Well, let's look at Maryland, Michigan State real quick. Maryland, Michigan State will be the 6:30 game on Thursday. What stands out here to you?
Michigan State just got done beating them, and I'm hoping that they're not necessarily saying, "Oh, we just beat them," and write it off as a W, because that could bite them. But Michigan State or Maryland they're so hot and cold. You don't know what Maryland team you're going to play against. They play against Purdue, have them beat, controversial calls, whatever it is, ended up losing. But then you just don't know what you're getting from Maryland. And I guess they have been the most schizophrenic, I guess, maybe, to where they're just all over the place.
And that's a sign of Mark Turgeon leaving in the middle of the season and Danny Manning taking over the reins. I mean, they're dealing with some stuff there in College Park. But to your point, Michigan State, Maryland, they've played twice already this season. You go back to February 1st. Michigan State was up 14 on the road in College Park. Next thing you know, that lead just evaporated, and Michigan State barely survives with a Malik Hall game winner at the buzzer to be able to get out of College Park. And then you go back just a few days ago, Sunday, Michigan State hosts Maryland on Senior Day. Michigan State has a lead of 22 points. It collapses on itself. It becomes a one-possession game with the Eric Ayala scoring 17 in the second half. Pay attention to that name, Eric Ayala. But Michigan State able to survive. They win on Senior Day, and Tom Izzo becomes the winningest coach. We'll talk about that in a little bit, too, with win 663, so the winningest coach at a Big Ten school. Nonetheless, Michigan State, Maryland. This is round 3 between them. We talked about Eric Ayala already from Maryland. Pay attention to the names. Fats Russell, the transfer in from Rhode Island.
Always makes me think it's a singer, Fats Domino.
Maryland is so heavy dependent on dribble drive penetration. It's not a great shooting team. It's not necessarily great defensively, but they drive the basketball just about as well and maybe better than anybody else in the Big Ten. Fats Russell leading that. Dante Scott's another one who really gets to the rim well. Michigan State was able to clog the gaps last time, and that led to a 22-point lead at one point for the Spartans. Meanwhile, Michigan State, boy, you would spend a lot of time ripping off the names of everybody that's kind of key because maybe their rotation is deeper than anybody else's.
Well, you talked about that they have so many people or so many guys in their rotation that average at least 7 points. So that means they're all really kind of valuable to their success.
And as we finish the year, there isn't a single player that averaged more than 10 points a game in Big Ten play. Like it's really a team effort is maybe the way to put it.
Right.
But Gabe Brown on the wing, Max Christie on the wing. Gabe Brown in his senior year. Max Christie's just a freshman, a highly touted recruit who is still figuring it out a little bit. He's also Michigan State's probably the best defender. So he's guarding the other team's best player on one end of the floor and then trying to find his offensive game on the other. That's been kind of the struggle.
That's tough to do.
Dual point guards with AJ Hogard and Tyson Walker. Sometimes they'll play on the floor together. These are two East Coast kids that both are in the top 15 or 20 in the country in assist percent rate. The bigs, you have Marcus Bingham Jr. down low, who's now MSU's all-time shot block leader. You have Julius Marble. One of those two will come off the bench. Michigan State's still been kind of playing with that rotation and starting lineup. And then Joey Hauser and Malik Hall. Malik Hall has been kind of a go-to guy. He and Tyson Walker have shot above 50% from 3 this year, Sam. 50%. The problem is
Walker hit a big one that I'm aware of. Jeez.
But you got to get him more shots. Yeah. And that's been kind of a challenge in East Lansing.
And also from what I've seen anyways, maybe getting into his head that he needs to take more as well.
That's it. I mean, it's not so much the offense isn't giving him opportunities. You would, if you had a nickel every time that you said at a Michigan State game and you heard the coaching staff say, shoot it.
which you don't necessarily hear in college, or at higher level basketball. Like those guys usually know, you know what, I'm shooting, you know,
usually it's trying to take the reins off of guys.
Stop shooting, but rather now they're yelling, shoot it, because and it's not, I don't know that it's a head thing to where he's worried whether or not he just is trying to distribute to what he thinks is maybe an easier opportunity. Maybe it's not necessarily that he's scared, because if you're scared, what do? You buy a dog. You don't, I don't think he's scared. I think he just wants to get that easy bucket rather than, okay, I'm 20 feet out,
And the realization at some point needs to set in that the 3-point shot with a guy late closing to you is a better shot than a shot fake pull up too. Like that's
correct. Yeah.
That's where it needs to kind of start clicking a little bit. Yeah. But real quick, Indiana, Michigan, we didn't get a winner from you.
I'm going to take Michigan, not because I hate IU necessarily, but I just think Michigan's playing at a better level right now.
Okay. Maryland, Michigan State.
I'll take Michigan State because I don't think I still, and it feels like I repeat this every week. I will take Tom Izzo over any other coach. Danny Manning, I liked him as a player, whatever. I still put a lot of stock in Tom Izzo.
And I think Danny's done a nice job getting his team to rally when they could have folded it in too.
Well, if I remember at the beginning of the year, the Maryland and Minnesota were supposed to fight over 14th.
Well, before Turgeon left?
Well, no, I'm sorry. That was the talk after Turgeon left. Sorry.
Yes. Yeah. Maryland really quickly went to the cellar after, because before the year, we were talking about Maryland kind of like we were Michigan State in football. Like, hey, this is a risky team. Either this team could be really good if it all comes together,
it could be a dumpster fire
with all the transfers, or it could be a dumpster fire. For Michigan State football, it was exceptionally well. For Maryland basketball, you saw it go the other way, and it's kind of fallen apart. But I'm going to pass the ball over to our producer, Sam Sprunger. So we got a little bit of business left. You want to
a little bit of business that I want to cover this, and then we'll go. Maybe we'll follow through into after halftime and pick it up the rest of the way.
Got it.
Real quick, potential matchups. I really am interested in the potential Iowa Rutgers.
Oh, yeah.
Because Iowa is playing at a very high level. Still, even though they got beat by Illinois, they're playing at a high enough level, but Rutgers is that unknown. They have the resume, the wins on their resume that gives them the 4 seed. I mean, they're not a 4 seed by accident. They played a 20-game Big Ten season and finished 4th.
Mm-hmm.
That's impressive, especially from a team that I could have told you Geo Baker and Ron Harper Jr. at the beginning of the season. That's it.
Yep.
And they finished 4th. And so I'm really interested in that potential matchup coming up. But I did want to ask, what's your championship matchup and who you got winning?
Ooh, I will go. Ooh. Okay.
Yeah.
See, I haven't really thought this through quite this way. I think there's going to be a little bit of chaos. I don't want to put too much money into the Badgers with Johnny Davis maybe not being 100%. We don't fully know what to expect there.
Right.
I think Purdue gets there out of that side of the bracket. And I think, and Purdue's a 3, and I think it ends up in chaos where they play somebody like a 5 seed Iowa.
Wow. Okay. So you know what? We're not far off on what we think for our championship matchup, because I say Rutgers and Purdue.
Okay. So neither of us took the Big Ten champ. Neither of us did.
No. And here's an interesting thing that Purdue, I looked at something, the last 7 national champions, only one of them was the conference champion of their conference. And that was Villanova the last time they won. Every other national champion for the last 7 years has not won their conference.
Yep.
So that lends to me that Purdue's going somewhere. Yeah. Maybe not.
And by the way, if we get to a spot where, I mean, you have Rutgers beating Iowa, I have Iowa getting to Rutgers and then beating Rutgers. If Iowa plays Illinois, remember, that's how the Big Ten season ended, where Illinois beat Iowa 74-72. Chris Murray had a look at the basket, couldn't get the shot to drop. So
close.
Illinois, I think there's maybe, if you're looking at it from an outside perspective, a potential letdown in terms of, hey, they finally got over the hump that they were clamoring about so much last year. And Iowa, maybe a little bit of redemption. So I kind of like the Hawkeyes at a 5 to make a run here.
I would not be shocked. Shoot, I told you I think that they're the team in the Big Ten that I think could make the furthest run if they get hot. And that's not discount. I still am going to root my butt off for Purdue, and I hope that they do make the Final Four and win the national title. But just the way teams were playing, Iowa is that sexy pick for me to say they're going to go far. So I would not be shocked at all if Iowa makes it to the finals.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll go. And you had Purdue in the championship, right?
I have Purdue and Rutgers. You have Purdue and Iowa.
Okay. So yeah, we're not far off. We'll see how close we end up being next week.
But who are you taking out of that matchup then?
I'm going. Oh boy. Do I really go Iowa? Give me Purdue.
And you know what? I'm going to take Purdue too. So we both came out with the same champion. We just have a different team that they're beating. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know?
Oh, this is the anti-mainstream sports talk show, huh? We just about agreed with the exact same thoughts.
But you know what? As long as we can justify how we got there, it doesn't matter.
Oh, no. Yeah. Well, I think it goes to say more about what mainstream sports talk is, but
right. Maybe that's it. So, all right, we were ready for halftime. We'll pick up the poll question on the other side. You are listening to Big Ten Plus 4, hosted on Anchor and StreamYard.
Hey, you there. We've got a question for you. Are you tired of clickbait stories and the loudest voices driving discussions in culture and entertainment?
If so, I'm Dylan.
I'm Kendall.
And I'm Corey.
And we host the podcast From the Middle. We're middle-class guys living in the middle of America, in the middle chapters of our lives with points of view somewhere in the middle.
We take a more reasonable and centrist approach in our discussions covering genres like comedy, culture, entertainment, and interviews, with really interesting folks like business owners, comic creators, doctors, news anchors, New York Times best-selling illustrators, professional stand-up comics, and more. We really value a relaxed and conversational podcast, one that we hope is so fun and laid back, you'll forget you're not actually hanging out with us.
So search at From the Mid Pod, just like it sounds, or check us out everywhere you can find podcasts.
I'm Rob.
I'm Nick.
And I'm Joe.
I love it.
I think it's kind of meh.
And I've never seen it.
We're keeping up with the Cardassians.
A podcast covering 7 seasons of Star Trek Deep Space Nine.
But that's not it. We go down the wormhole
Of pop culture, life, and Garrick.
New episodes every Monday.
On your favorite podcasting platforms. You can also interact with the show on Twitter at CardassiansPod.
And just like the Ferengi, we can't wait to stroke your lobes.
All right, the third quarter. Oh, go ahead, Sam.
No, I was just going to say, we've got on Odd Pods Media, we have a Weird Al specific show and a Deep Space Star Trek Deep Space Nine specific show. It's humorous to me. And you know what? They're both very, very good and they're very successful. So I mean, obviously there's an audience for it.
I do love too the descriptions of, I think it's good. I think it's I've never seen it.
I've never seen it.
Like that dynamic is just it's very attractive to me. I do like that's pretty well done.
So that makes you at least intrigued to maybe go check it out. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, all right. So hey, I wanted to throw out the Twitter poll question. Yep. Okay. It's on Twitter. We didn't really talk about what surprised us the most seeding wise, but as we get ready to get started, what is the biggest surprise seed wise? And there are four options that we've got. We've got Illinois as the 1, Wisconsin as the 2, Rutgers as the 4, or your infamous or famous, whatever you want to call it, other. Post in the comments. The reason why 1 and 2 are on there is because, does it surprise you that Illinois is the 1? I mean, Wisconsin, they should be the 10 if you went by preseason.
I was going to say, I suppose the big question is, am I surprised from a couple weeks ago or am I surprised from the beginning of the season if you gave me these results? That's my big follow-up.
Let's say the beginning of the season. Would it be Wisconsin for you?
Wisconsin. Hands down, Wisconsin.
And see, at the beginning of the season, having not really known what the preseason call was, historically Wisconsin's been good, so it doesn't surprise me if I were to go from the beginning of the season. Rutgers surprises the daylights out of me.
See, I had Rutgers slotted around 7 in the preseason.
So it's not as big of a surprise to you then.
Not huge. I think and especially what we saw early in the season, how bad they looked for them to rally the way they did. I was stunned about that. Mm-hmm. But if I'm going from preseason, the 2 that really surprised me the most, one of them's not an option, would be Iowa as well. The 5 seed.
That's the other.
Well, that's what I mean. I would have to comment below. But Iowa, I really did not think would have a great season this year. They just lost Luka Garza. They lose Joe Wieskamp. What are they gonna do with Jordan Bohannon coming back and a potential breakout player in Keegan Murray? And it turns out Keegan Murray just becomes one of the best scorers in the country and elevates this team to a new height. So I was stunned that the Iowa Hawkeyes ended at 5. Also stunned that Wisconsin won the Big Ten and ended at 2.
I guess that surprises me that they won it. But, like I said, I didn't have that preconceived they shouldn't be that good at the beginning of the season.
Well, the point I'd bring up too is we talked about how great Johnny Davis is, and again, without Johnny Davis, where do you have Wisconsin?
If they don't have Johnny Davis, they're fighting for the 12 seed, I think.
And so if you follow that logic, none of us knew Johnny Davis had this in him before the year.
Like we said last week, we knew he was a good player. We didn't know he was player of the year material.
Correct. I mean, Johnny Davis had the biggest improvement, biggest season that defied what his individual expectations were out of a player that I can remember in recent times. Like, it was absolutely alarming what Johnny Davis did this season, considering that before the year, I mean, we remember him being a nice role player. His freshman season.
Right.
Like, what? Johnny Davis is now dropping 20-some points, grabbing all these rebounds. He had 37 and 14 at Mackey. Like,
and honestly, I knew of him, but that really made me take notice of what he was doing. Not that he wasn't doing something before that, but it was early in the Big Ten season that they played. And when he blew up for that, I'm like, really?
Yeah.
And that made me kind of stand up and realize, okay, we're cooking with gas here is what we're doing with Johnny Davis.
No, it's a very fair point. So I see you kind of busy over there. Are you pulling up poll results or what do you?
I'm actually, I realized I forgot to post the poll. So that's what I'm in the process of doing right now, trying to talk.
Very good. A little behind the scenes there. I was curious where
you saw me busily doing something, looking down. So
well, and I didn't. My point wasn't to call you out; it was to segue you to whatever you were doing. But so let's take a look at the old poll then, while we get that around, where we asked which Big Ten team will win the Big Ten tournament. I
like the results, by the way.
We talked about it last segment, and both of us landed with Purdue. It's the difference is that I had Purdue beating Iowa in the championship. Sam has Purdue beating Rutgers in the championship. If you look at the results so far, 44% of you, the listeners, are looking at Boiler Up as well. So 44% of you land on Purdue, 34% saying not one of those teams. 11% saying Wisconsin, 11% saying Illinois. So that's how that poll shook out.
And honestly, I think it was according to the KenPom rating. They broke down each team's percentage chance to win the Big Ten tournament, and Purdue was like at 34%.
Yep.
Followed by, all the way down. And I think Wisconsin was only like 5 or 6% maybe. And Illinois was maybe at 10. So like here's the thing. Conference season is a completely different animal than the whole season combined. And so you can get those skewed results in the conference, but have a favorite as a conference, a favorite of the conference teams to do well. And I think Purdue falls into that. Now, we've talked about that. They were snake bitten 4 different times, 4 of their 6. That is 2/3 of their losses came on game winners.
Yep.
And the only 2 that didn't was a 25-point anomaly loss against Michigan, and then Johnny Davis blowing up at Mackey.
Yep. So
all in all, they easily could be, only 2 losses and probably the top ranked team in the nation if they win if those game winners don't fall like they did.
Yep. That's how close Purdue's been. And it's a big reason why Purdue's a safe pick, because you look at that talent and boy, it's a little overwhelming, all the talent that Purdue has.
Well, you talked about the freshman at Nebraska,
Bryce McGowan's.
Yes. Averaging 17 points a game, and how that's just amazing, and it is, don't get me wrong. Jaden Ivey averages 17 points. Think about that. He averages 17 points on a team that is loaded compared to, and nothing against Nebraska or the players that play. Nebraska is not loaded.
Right.
So if that tells you what kind of player Jaden Ivey is, you probably should bet on him to do well. Not to say that he's necessarily they're going to win the title because of that, but you need to take notice that he can take control of a game easily. He did it against Illinois when they played at Mackey.
Yep.
Illinois went to the half ahead by 2 points. And by the time we hit the under 12 timeout, Purdue was up like 12. And it was because Jaden Ivey decided he was taking the game over.
Yep. I mean, he's that special. That's why he ended up on the first team for all Big Ten because of all those reasons. And in a most contested year I can remember for such awards. Real quick, we do want to move over to the coaching segments that we
we're finally getting to what we originally planned for the third quarter.
But as we take a look at a couple of the coaching topics, you had a couple big things happen. Of course, Michigan State's Tom Izzo ends up with win 663. That gives him the most ever at a Big Ten school. That is unbelievably impressive. He passes Bob Knight. Anytime you're spoken in the same sentence as Bob Knight, it's very impressive.
Yeah, love or hate Bob Knight, you cannot discount what he did on the court as a coach.
Correct. But so Tom Izzo gets that win, 663 that he's had at Michigan State. And if I feel like we've already kind of cemented Tom Izzo as one of the greatest coaches in that the Big Ten's ever seen. I think we're talking Knight, Katie, Izzo, not in that order even.
Right.
And I think you throw in Lou Henson.
I think I looked at they showed, I saw the top 5 win wise, and it was right before Izzo tied Knight. And it was Knight, Izzo, Gene Katie, Lou Henson, and Matt Painter are the top 5.
I mean,
that's a good company to be part of, you know?
So I'm not sure that Izzo has anything obviously left to prove, or matter of fact, I know he doesn't. But my point is, I'm not sure, like, when you're looking at the legacy of Tom Izzo, what this necessarily does or changes anything, or if it's just a really neat feather in the cap for an incredible, already Hall of Fame career. He went in 6 years ago into the Naismith Hall of Fame and continues to pile on to that resume. I just think it's a neat moment, and it was great to have Michigan State fans celebrate it with him with those 663 signs in the crowd.
Yeah, I'm just glad that Bob Knight didn't stop at 665.
Yeah, very fair.
It would have been kind of unsettling to have a bunch of signs with the
That's a great point.
The first place amount.
Yeah. So those
times.
Those 3 6s in a row seamlessly segues us to the Blue Devils, where Duke ends up saying goodbye on senior day to close out the regular season to one of the greatest coaches that college basketball's ever seen in Coach Mike Krzyzewski, and they say goodbye with a loss to arch rival North Carolina, an unranked North Carolina team. I know this is one that had you excited to talk about.
Well, and here's what I wanted to talk about, because I heard it talked about on the radio, is the amount of people that were taking pleasure in the fact that Duke got beat, especially by North Carolina, in Mike Krzyzewski's last regular season game. And it brought up the question, why do so many people hate Duke or hate Coach K? I don't think I dislike Duke a bunch, but I really like Mike Krzyzewski. And let's think about, and I've got a real quick story, not story, but memory. I can remember one time that Duke was last in the ACC in my lifetime, once. And it was the year that Mike Krzyzewski had back surgery and missed 2/3 of the season. And if that doesn't tell you what kind of coach Coach K is, I mean, don't get me wrong, he's a great recruiter. He gets it. He has a McDonald's All-American team on the floor all at once. I mean, that's what he's gotten throughout this career. But you know what? It still takes a coach to put those players in position, to keep them driven to where they're performing at the McDonald's All-American level, at the college level. And it just, when he has back surgery and they finish last, and then the next year they're in the tournament and probably, I don't even know, but probably competing for a Final Four, that should give you an idea of what kind of coach he is. And the basketball world's going to miss him very much so. So
He's
yeah.
He's a model of consistency, kind of, is what you're getting at, and it's
Yeah.
the same thing that we really appreciate about Tom Izzo and some of these other
Correct.
coaches too. It's the idea that you can go to 23 straight NCAA tournaments, which I believe Coach K did 23, and now Tom Izzo is looking at 24. Like that shows you just how consistent they are. What's amazing to me, one of the nuggets that came out in the middle of all of this, Duke wins the ACC outright, right? They win the ACC championship.
Yep.
It's the first time Coach K and Duke has done that outright since 2006.
Isn't that amazing?
So think about this. We have a Hall of Fame coach. We got somebody that we just put in the same sentence as John Wooden quite often because Coach K is that good and he's got that many wins in his resume. It kind of shares that story. So you have this coach in Coach K. And since then, he won a title in 2010, he won a title in 2015, national championships. But when it comes to his own conference, last time he won one outright was 2006. That goes to show you how hard it is to win these conference championships. So like what Greg Gard's done, winning 2 in the last 3 with some of the Wisconsin teams he's had, Illinois finally getting over that hump. And Illinois, it's their first Big Ten title since 2005.
Right.
Like, embrace that because it is difficult. You have Coach K, one of the best to ever do this, and it's his first outright in 16 years. I thought that was a very telling stat about how difficult this is.
And that's not to say he hasn't won an ACC championship. It's just he hasn't won it by himself at that point. And most of the time, and most of the time when Krzyzewski's won a conference with a share, that other person is probably getting Coach of the Year in the conference. Because if you can win the conference and you're sharing with Duke, you've done something special, you know. And that's not to say that, you know, Duke's not. Here's the thing: Duke fans need to appreciate it, and I think they do. I mean, camping out for 30+ days in order to get tickets to be at the final game is ridiculous. Not in a stupid way, just it's ridiculous. But don't judge what your program looks like on the next coach. He may be absolutely wonderful, but it's hard to follow up a great.
I do feel for John Shire. That's not easy. It's not easy, and we'll see.
And we'll look at what is it, Bill Guthridge that came in for after Dean Smith. He made the Final Four the next year because Dean Smith still had some players in the program. After that, there were some rough years for North Carolina until they got Roy Williams. So it could be the next few years. It could be kind of rough for Blue Devils fans, or John Shire may be the next Mike Krzyzewski. We don't know that yet. But if there's a couple of lean years in there, don't start saying that he's a bum or whatever. It's hard to follow up. It just is.
No, it's a great point. It's a great point. With that, let's head to the fourth quarter.
Yes, sir.
All right, this is the segment of the show where we bring you our headline, something that stuck out to us both throughout the week. So we'll start off with Sam Sprunger and the Sam Sentinel.
Oh, I started the show by singing, and I will finish the show by singing.
Boy, this is a treat. Go ahead. Feet her up.
My title, yeah, put your feet on the desk, get relaxed. My title of the Sam Sentinel is "Won't You Stay Just a Little Bit Longer?" Okay.
Nicely done.
Jaden Ivey. I'm gonna go Homer style here. Jaden Ivey is getting ready to start his second Big Ten tournament, and then subsequently second NCAA tournament. And it would be a shame. It would be naive of anybody to think that there is a chance that he's coming back to West Lafayette for next year. Okay, and this is the struggle of a college sports fan, and you're rattling a little bit there.
Oh, thank you.
That's all right. The struggle of a college sports fan is you get players for a very small portion of their career. And, like next year, good luck to Jaden Ivey, but there's not much of there's no chance he's coming back to Purdue. And that ends such a great run with this super talented young man. From what I see, he's got just enough cockiness that it makes it fun to watch, but yet he is a very respectful young man as well. And the reason behind my statement is that's the struggle for college fans, because they just want them to stay just a little bit, because we get them only a small portion of their careers, and we can see the greatness, and we can see what type of player and human being these players are. And and we wish them luck, but we want them to stay. I can remember when Glenn Robinson was at Purdue. I was almost on the border. I was on the verge of tears when Mike Krzyzewski and Grant Hill beat Purdue in the Elite Eight, because I knew that was the end of a great run. And watching this player who was the best in my lifetime, the best college player I've ever seen, Glenn Robinson. He didn't translate necessarily the greatest in the pros. And that's what I'm kind of getting at, is college fans just want them to stay just a little bit longer so we can hold them in that regard. So more of a venting, I guess, but at the same time, I understand these kids, and I call them kids because they're in their very early 20s, where I'm, in my very early 40s. But it's one of those that I really appreciate, that they're talented and they want to move on and start their careers. I get that. But at the same time, it hurts like hell to see them go. So that's the headlines from the same Sentinel.
It's interesting too, because I don't mean to keep looping it back to Michigan State, where my allegiances are, but you think a couple of years ago, Miles Bridges stayed after his freshman year, and Tom Izzo told him to go. He said, no, I want another year. So he stayed for his sophomore year. There's an interview recently that came out with Jaren Jackson Jr., where he said, I came to Tom after the end of the year and said, hey, I'm wanting to run it back. And Tom just laughed at me and told me get out of here, because I was a top 4 pick in the draft. But
you're not going to improve your draft stock any by sticking around.
Nope. And it's neat too when coaches understand that too, and it's not a selfish thing, because as fans we're allowed to be selfish. I mean, it's kind of
I can remember when Glenn Robinson they got beat by Duke, and the next day Gene Cady came out in an interview and said, I told him to go.
Yep.
He's going to be the number 1 pick in the draft. He needs to go start his career.
Yep.
And while I was angry, I understood I was angry, though. I wanted him to stay.
Yep. No, it makes complete sense. As I move over to the Dalton Daily on the big screen, I appreciate it.
Yes, you're welcome.
Don't think I'm ignoring anybody here. I'm pulling something up on my phone to be able to if you got me on video and you see me on my phone. I'm looking at the all Big Ten teams, because we ran so long with everything else, we didn't really get to this. So I wanted to be able to tip the cap to some of these folks here on the Dalton Daily. So we'll start with the player of the year we already talked about, Johnny Davis, Wisconsin. And you know what, Sam, over there and over my shoulder, if you want any red flags you see here, go ahead, throw them up. If you see a selection that you disagreed with, player of the year, Johnny Davis, we can move on there. Coach of the year, Greg Gard, Wisconsin.
Keep moving.
Keep moving. Sixth man of the year, Travion Williams, Purdue.
You know what? Honestly, he could have been an all Big Ten team, like first teamer, and I wouldn't have argued with that too.
And I think both the media and coaches, yes, they both made him third team. Yeah, I think I would have put him second team too.
At least.
Oh, let's stay second team here, Sam.
Well, my point being is I wouldn't have argued had they put him on the first team. I'm not saying he deserves to be there. But I'm also a Purdue homer.
Well, and I love Travion's game, but when you look at the first team, which I'll rattle off now, Kofi Coburn, Keegan Murray, EJ Liddell, Jaden Ivey, Johnny Davis, he can't replace one of those.
Well, hey, he's already the player of the year. He doesn't need to be first team Big Ten. Let's take Johnny Davis off.
There you go. Well, interesting you say that. This has caused a little bit of controversy. Johnny Davis, Not a unanimous selection for all Big Ten first team by the media. Kofi Coburn, Keegan Murray were on everybody's ballots. Somebody out there did not have a ballot with Johnny Davis on all Big Ten first team.
They need to remove his ability to vote for next year.
That was something. And I don't know if we've still gotten to the bottom of what the reasoning was that Johnny Davis
honestly, they need to find out who it is and revoke his voting ability next year, because that's ridiculous. Was he? I mean, come on.
We can debate player of the year. We cannot debate if he was a top 5 player in the league this year. That's not a possible conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. We can argue whether or not you think he's the player of the year. I don't care on that. That's within your right.
Mm-hmm.
He's an all Big Ten. He's a first team all Big Ten player.
Because Kofi and Keegan Murray were deserving Big Ten player of the years. In other years, they might have won the award. I think
Correct.
Johnny was just, I think they got it right. I think Johnny is the player of the year.
Sure.
But yeah, we could have had a conversation about that. We can't have a conversation about is Johnny Davis a first team member though?
No, because you know what? If you argue against it, you're wrong. Period.
Yep.
End of statement.
Defensive player of the year. This one was interesting. And I'm not necessarily sure they got it wrong. Only the coaches vote on this, which is probably a good move because the coaches pay attention to the intricacies that come out for that side of the floor much more than what the media just will naturally. But Caleb McConnell from Rutgers gets the nod here. And I don't think they're wrong. I'm curious how close Trent Frazier from Illinois was.
That's who I would have said. Trent Frazier. I mean, he's lockdown. I mean, period. I mean, he may not have the offensive stats, but like we've talked before, those aren't always the necessary stats that you look at as whether or not they're effective or valuable.
Yeah.
Trent Frazier is a beast. I worried for Illinois when they played Purdue and he buckled, but what it was is knee to knee, I think is what it was, and knocked him down. I thought he'd blown his knee out, and I thought, oh, goodness, I don't know what their chances are now.
It hurt my heart when you saw him drop to the floor.
Because here it is. I'm a competitor in the aspect I want to Purdue to beat them. I don't want something horrible to happen to the players while they're beating them. You know,
and especially somebody like Frazier, like it, you don't ever want to see it with anybody, but boy, the guy's the heartbeat of the team. He's been there since the beginning with Brad Underwood. I mean, he's taken this program from the cellar to the ceiling. That was a tough moment, but thankfully he was back, as you mentioned, and maybe could have been defensive player of the year. But we'll move on to freshman of the year, where both the coaches and the media agreed. Malachi Branham from Ohio State.
Do not disagree in any way, shape, or form. None. No. If you remember last week, I said if him and Liddell are hitting, I think Ohio State makes it to the second weekend, and I still feel that way because Liddell is awesome, fantastic, first team, Big Ten, and Branham if he hits, they're in trouble. Whoever's got to play Ohio State is going to be in trouble.
Well, one of the bigger problems with the Buckeyes, and I don't mean to tangent on this, but injuries and whatnot. Yeah. Zed Key has been dealing with an ankle injury. He missed a couple games towards the end of the season. Kyle Young had an illness. He was missing games. You haven't had Justice Suing for all but 2 games all season long. Like, and that's the front court. Like, there's not many bigs. Like, Joey Brunk is getting big time minutes, and Brunk played pretty well at the end of the season, but he's not the Buckeyes' first choice. So if they're going to make a Sweet 16 run, they got to just get healthy first and foremost, to be honest. But nonetheless, those are the awards for the Big Ten basketball season, and a good look at the Dalton Daily. So as we wrap up and say goodbye, Sam, you want to let everybody know where they can find us?
Yes, sir. If you look at the top of our screen, if you're watching, you've got the 3 ways, or the 3 best ways, I guess, to find us social media and website wise. Big Ten Plus at Big Ten Plus, spell out the word plus 4 on Twitter, Big Ten Plus 4 on Facebook, oddpodsmedia.com. We are on ASAP Network. Thanks, guys, for letting us stream here. We really enjoy being able to do that here. There are restreams of this show on ASAP, but then you can also go to Spotify if you really have to watch us, which, hey, that's fine. Go to Spotify. We have our video podcast up. Anywhere else, consume it audio-wise, you're going to get the same product as you normally do. but Spotify and ASAP Network will allow you to watch if you so choose to do so. So doing good things, man.
Yeah, that's certainly exciting. We got a lot going on, a lot of different places that you can find us. So for Big Ten Plus 4, that's Sam Sprunger. I'm Dalton Shetler. We'll talk to you soon.
See you later.